Commander Fox was a clone trooper commander of the Coruscant Guard. His duties primarily revolved around maintaining law and order on the Republic's capital planet, which gave him a unique position compared to other clone commanders stationed on the front lines. You'd think this high-ranking position would make him a standout character. Well, he is, for all the wrong reasons. Despite having really sick armor and only serving his duty, a lot of fans started to really dislike him due to two big things. First, he chased down Ahsoka after she was framed for the Jedi Temple bombing. Fox was relentless in pursuing her, even when her innocence became increasingly apparent to others. Also because of this scene where he didn't have any empathy to let Anakin in to see her. He is the literal definition of good soldiers follow orders, doing anything to stick to protocol. Fans saw this as a frustrating display of his inability to question orders or use independent judgment, a stark contrast to clones like Rex or Cody, who often displayed moral complexity and personal growth. And it gets worse. Later in Season 6, Fox commits what many fans consider an unforgivable act, killing Fives, one of the series' most beloved clones, during the conspiracy arc involving the inhibitor chips. I think even the writers wanted him to be disliked because after he kills Fives, all the other shock troopers mourn him by standing around him. All except for Fox, who is absent for some reason. So yeah, this moment solidified Fox as one of the least liked clones among the fandom. He's later killed by Darth Vader by getting his neck snapped apart. I guess it was some sort of revenge for Ahsoka and Fives from Vader's part. Ewoks. These small, furry inhabitants of the forest moon of Endor made their debut in Return of the Jedi, and boy are they divisive. While some fans find their presence endearing and a fun contrast to the darker themes of the series, others see them as the epitome of selling out to market Star Wars toys to children. The bigger factor leading to them being disliked is because the Ewoks play a crucial role in the defeat of the Empire by helping the rebels destroy the shield generator protecting the second Death Star. They do all this while being armed with literal sticks that you'd collect for firewood, slingshots, and logs. These terrifying weapons from the Stone Age are apparently enough to defeat the most technologically advanced army that's ever been seen in the galaxy. The Ewoks are the reason that the Empire and Stormtroopers henceforth have never ever been taken seriously again. They're just treated as literal butt monkeys and cannon fodder. And with Disney taking over, this hasn't really changed, and instead even got worse. Look, that wasn't even remotely close to hitting the target. A good villainous faction shouldn't be literally incompetent in my humble opinion, but oh well, George Lucas started this and they stuck with it. On a brighter note though, not everyone actually dislikes the Ewoks. In fact, personally, I like them, and there's a simple reason for that. But instead of having me explain it, I'll let a true legend explain it. Take it away, Barney.
This side loved the Ewoks because, why? They reminded you of your teddies.
Okay, now let's spin the wheel of the worthless Inquisitors to determine which will be the next Inquisitor on my list. Yes, great. The first brother served as a member of the Galactic Empire's Inquisitorius, tasked with hunting Jedi in the aftermath of Order 66. At some point during 18 BBY, the first brother received a tip from a villager regarding the presence of Vader's former apprentice, Ahsoka Tano, in a small settlement. In a display of power, he slaughtered the entire village population. When Ahsoka returned to the village, the first brother identified her and boasted that her death would bring him great reward. He attacks Ahsoka, who, may I add, is armed with literally nothing, and then manages to get disarmed and killed all in one motion. Like, why do they have to be such a joke? I know they did it to show how strong Ahsoka is, but come on. Like, are you telling me these guys are supposed to hunt down remaining Jedi, even though every time we see them, they can't even beat literal Padawans like Kanan or Cal Kestis? This guy just symbolizes this once again. Here's how the recruitment works to become an Inquisitor 101. First, you must wear super cool armor. Second, have a very menacing presence. I get literal chills looking at him. He got that down great. Third, be absolutely useless and then die after getting into a fight for like 3 seconds. Way to write great villains, guys. Pong Krell is one of the most infamous Jedi in the Clone Wars. As a Jedi General, Krell is introduced as a strict, unyielding commander who demands absolute obedience from his clone troopers. However, it quickly becomes clear that Krell is not just harsh, he's downright cruel. Krell's disdain for the clones under his command and his reckless strategies result in extremely heavy casualties, which in turn creates tension and resentment among his troops. He refuses to call the clones by their names, rather calling them by their numbers. He literally has his troops walk through a minefield while he stands on top and just watches how they explode and die. He never ever engages in battle himself, which is a stark contrast to the other Jedi who we've always seen right up front with their troops. All this while blaming all failure on the clones. Like, look at this.
CT-7567, do you have a malfunction in your design? You've pulled your forces back from taking the capital city. The enemy now has control of this route. This entire operation has been compromised because of your failure!
3 rogue clones even go as far as to single-handedly destroy the Umbaran defense fleet in orbit, and upon their return, rather than thanking them for their service, he has them executed for disobedience. As the arc unfolds, his true colors are revealed. Krell has fallen to the dark side, seeking to serve the Sith in anticipation of the Republic's downfall. His biggest ploy, setting the 501st and 212th Battalion to kill each other by telling both battalions that they were fighting Umbarans in the clone armor. In the end, he gets killed by the clones, but the damage had been done. He was responsible for the death of countless clones, including Waxer, and I think I'm speaking for everyone when I say I was so relieved when Dogma ended up shooting him. Of course, he was purposely written this way, but actually I would have preferred if he would stayed a Jedi, as the idea of a Jedi who hates clones and has completely been pushed to the edge by the war is the best indicator of the Clone Wars being a pushing point for the Jedi, pushing them further toward the dark side and showing how they'll eventually fail. But I guess this message does come across still, even when he turned to the Separatist side. But it would have been interesting to see how he'd interact with more traditional Jedis once they learned how crazy he was. Trace and Rafa Martz are sisters introduced in the Clone Wars Season 7 as part of Ahsoka's journey after leading the Jedi Order. They operate as independent scavengers and smugglers in Coruscant's underworld, with Trace dreaming of owning her own ship and Rafa taking a more pragmatic approach to survival. Now, why are they disliked? Well, most of the blame can be laid on Trace. She's comically dumb. I think she could actually rival Jar Jar in just doing dumb stuff. During a spice run, she literally dumps the entire load because she got mad? Literally, could they not come up with any other way that could help them get the characters in trouble?
No one is taking my ship!
Throughout the arc, she just keeps being bratty, naive, and super annoying. And mind you, she's an orphan that grew up in the underworld of Coruscant, where there are criminals everywhere. How did she even survive up to this point? Another reason she's disliked this much is because she was part of the final season of the Clone Wars, a show that had been cancelled but brought back to give us one last glorious finale, being limited to 12 episodes. But instead of having episodes about Anakin and Obi-Wan on Utapau having some deep talk, Cad Bane teaching Boba Fett about bounty hunting, or even how Sidious, Grievous, and Count Dooku team up to defeat Darth Maul and Mother Talzin, we got this. Trace Martell dumping spice for no reason at all, and then getting captured like 4 times by the Pike Syndicate. It is arguably one of the worst Clone Wars arcs, and definitely should not have been part of the final season. L337 is the droid introduced in Solo: A Star Wars Story. Known for her self-awareness and advocacy for droid rights, L3 is a unique and rather unconventional addition to the Star Wars droid lineup. Her outspoken personality and desire for freedom certainly sets her apart from characters like R2-D2 and C-3PO, making her a memorable, albeit polarizing, figure. As Lando Calrissian's co-pilot and companion, L3 plays a key role in Solo, often accompanying the team and flying the Falcon, although Lando might have taken the companion role of her a bit too seriously. Wait, Lando, no! Don't touch the droid inappropriately! However, her basically being a, real-life activist takes me completely out of the movie-going experience. Why exactly did we need a droid that wants to liberate droids? Droids are robots. Literal robots. Yes, some do have personalities, but most don't. And comparing owning a droid to having a slave, which is what they're trying to get at with this plot, is quite a far stretch for me. It would basically be like my Roomba being my slave and me being the big bad slaver that's keeping the poor little Roomba hostage as he has to vacuum my house the whole day, instead of being able to go on his own epic adventure through my garden. Anyway, I don't like this droid, but to make things funnier, Disney kills her off in the most brutal way possible. She literally gets sliced in half by a laser bolt, and then when Lando tries to save her, he rips her in half accidentally. So I guess that's the penultimate fate of droid freedom fighters. Nice messaging there, Disney. Now please get this Karen-esque droid out of here, and this weird droid kink Lando as well.
I'm gonna get you out of here, alright?
The Vespa Gang, officially known as the Mods, which stands for the Modifier Gang, are a group of cybernetically enhanced youths introduced in the Book of Boba Fett. Living on the streets of Mos Espa, they work for Boba Fett after he offers them employment instead of punishment for stealing water. That's some real moral values there, Boba. Complete 180 from your previous life.
No disintegration.
They're best known for their bright, glossy speeder bikes that resemble vintage Vespas, hence why I call them the Vespa Gang. The Mods' aesthetic, amongst of cyberpunk and retro flair, feel completely out of place in the gritty, dusty environment of Tatooine. Their slow-moving speeder chase in Episode 3 is probably one of the worst chase scenes ever, only to be rivaled by the Leia chase scene in Obi-Wan, that is. Why are they bad? Well, they just don't add anything to the story at all. Their story with Boba can be summed up like this. They are poor and jobless, so they steal water from one of Boba's towns. Boba doesn't like them stealing water, so he offers them to be as part of his private force. And that's it. That's their entire story. Let's play a game. I dare you to tell me this guy's name. 3, 2, 1. Got it? It's Scad. Now this Vespa girl. 3, 2, 1. Drash. Now you'll have learned more about them than in the entirety of the Book of Boba Fett. I certainly did. Oh, they also know the spinning trick from Anakin. Iden Versio is the protagonist of the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign, introduced as the leader of Inferno Squad, an elite Imperial Special Forces unit. Raised as an Imperial loyalist, Iden goes on a journey from a devoted servant of the Empire to a heroic member of the Rebel Alliance after being disillusioned by the cruelty and corruption of the Empire, particularly after witnessing the destruction of her homeworld, Vardos, during Operation Cinder. Now, why is that bad? Because it's just such a boring trait. Literally every single character has gone from bad guy to good. Agent Kallus, General Hux, Darth Vader, Hondo, Kylo Ren, and the list goes on. Iden could have been an incredibly deep and interesting character, actually. An elite Imperial agent that truly believes in the Empire's cause and actually sticks to these principles till the end? That would have been a good setup for an interesting antagonist. Sadly, it's wasted on a rushed turn, and now she's just fully devoted to the Rebel Alliance without any second thought, killing and shooting down all her former comrades. What a boring story arc. Even if she'd have a problem with what the Empire was doing, wouldn't she rather try to change the Imperial's mind instead of going, yeah, I have to kill them all now? You know what isn't boring, though? There's actually an Inferno Squad book which is about one of their missions where they infiltrate a rebel operation and end up having to kill each one of them. It's a really good read, and I'd recommend it to anyone interested. Captain Phasma, portrayed by Gwendolyn Christie, was introduced as a high-ranking officer in the First Order in The Force Awakens, and she's the first live-action Chrome Stormtrooper we've ever gotten. You know, the guys you'd always get as special promotional figures either from LEGO or other toy companies? She got marketed towards us as a major antagonist in the build-up to The Force Awakens, going as far as even getting her own book that explains her origins and upbringing. So fans and yours truly were excited to see a character who promised to be the sequel trilogy's answer to Boba Fett, a mysterious, badass enforcer. Unfortunately, Phasma became one of the most infamous examples of wasted potential in Star Wars. Despite her striking design and elite position, Phasma's role in the story is minimal. In The Force Awakens, she's outmaneuvered by Finn and Han Solo, who force her to lower Starkiller's base shields with minimal resistance. Her most significant moment comes in The Last Jedi, where she battles Finn during Supremacy's destruction, only to be defeated and killed after a few minutes of screen time. In her book, she's literally a gladiator fighting wild animals with axes. She literally killed her parents and killed a whole bunch of people armed with barely anything just to survive on the desolate world she was born on. She is the definition of a battle-hardened warrior. But nope, not in the movies she isn't. There, she's just another pushover character that could have been any other character and it wouldn't have affected the story in the slightest. Just a walking, cool-looking asset that gives some one-liners. Nala is a Kaminoen scientist first introduced in the Clone Wars as the head geneticist of Kamino's cloning program. Her unparalleled expertise in bioengineering made her instrumental in the creation of the Grand Army of the Republic. However, her cold and calculating demeanor, coupled with her species' pragmatic detachment, quickly defined her character. For Nala, science and progress were the highest priority, with little regard for the ethical implications or the lives affected by her work. An analogy you could use to describe her is she could have basically developed the atom bomb and then go on to not care at all how it would be used. Nala viewed the clones not as individuals but as products, tools of war to be perfected and utilized. She demonstrates that to mere perfection in her interactions with Tup and Fives, talking casually about terminating them like she was talking about her broken dishwasher, as she can't accept that one of her creations could be flawed in any way.
These Jedi are a curious cult.
Too spiritual for my taste. I will terminate the clone immediately.
She's also a big reason Fives dies, as she drugged him to make him to be perceived as a crazy person. So yeah, that's why she's widely disliked by fans. Her portrayal in The Bad Batch only deepened this perception. While Nala showed a unique level of care for Omega, it became increasingly clear that her concern and actions weren't born out of empathy. Instead, Omega represented the pinnacle of Nala scientific achievements, a perfect genetic creation that validated her life's work. She didn't want anyone to get in possession of her greatest scientific achievement in Omega, thus she does everything to keep her away from the Empire. I'd say she did redeem herself by blowing up the lab on Mount Tantus, giving her character a good conclusion, but she's well deserving on this list nonetheless. Lieutenant Nolan was a minor yet very impactful character introduced in The Bad Batch. An arrogant and cold-hearted Imperial officer, Nolan exemplifies the Empire's growing disregard for the clones who once fought its wars. Tasked with overseeing a remote Imperial outpost on a snowy planet, Nolan immediately clashes with Crosshair and the outpost's station clones, particularly Mayday. Nolan's disdain for clones and callous disregard for their lives make him a despicable antagonist, like literally Jeffrey Lannister level of despicable. And just like with Krell, I think everyone was rooting for Crosshair to shoot this guy. I'd like to imagine that every viewer watching this guy get shot was cheering afterwards. To sum it up though, his character and the way he was portrayed was very necessary to show Crosshair's growing disillusionment with the Empire, and thus he makes the list being disliked, but in a good way, as it progresses the story forward. My honorable mention, DJ, whose name stands for Don't Join? He's the slicer recruited by Finn and Rose during their mission to disable the First Order's hyperspace tracker. DJ is notable for his pragmatic worldview as he openly rejects both the Resistance and the First Order, declaring it's all a machine, live free, don't join. Only reason he's on this list is because I saw this Reddit post where they put him as an all-time great villain in Star Wars. DJ, an all-time great. What kind of stuff was this guy on? He's part of the most pointless subplot of the worst Star Wars movie ever made. How does he make any list containing the greatest characters, not to mention being on one level with Thrawn, Vader, or Cad Bane? DJ's presence ultimately adds little to the story, and if you'd cut him out, the story wouldn't change at all. So yeah, don't like him, don't like The Last Jedi. Scorch, officially known as RC-1262, is one of the iconic members of Delta Squad, first introduced in the 2005 video game Star Wars Republic Commando. Known for his sarcastic sense of humor and expertise with explosives, Scorch quickly became a fan favorite. His banter often lightens the tense, gritty atmosphere of the game, adding a dose of personality to the otherwise stoic commandos. However, his canon depiction is a shadow of his personality I just described. In The Bad Batch, he's literally just standing there and taking commands. Standing there and taking commands, dropping one-liners like, "Yes, sir." And lastly, he gets shot by Hunter and falls off a bridge. That's our first canon appearance of Scorch. That's how they decided to depict him. Him being on this list is more of a complaint on Disney Lucasfilm than me disliking the character himself. Why did you have to assassinate his character like this? Why did this character of the Imperial Commando commanders have to be Scorch? This is fan service at its worst. Fans seeing a recognizable face and armor and they expect people to go, "Oh, I know him." But instead of doing anything with it, they just waste it. He could have been literally any new character. Like, here, I'll give you one writing staff. Swap out Scorch for my newly made up CC Commando Kennedy, and it wouldn't have made any difference to the story. Please do not bring in fan-favorite characters if there's no plan at all for them except to die in the most pathetic way imaginable. Well, that concludes my list. Next video, at some point, we'll look into the Acolyte characters, and boy, that'll be quite something to write, as I haven't watched that show, and I really don't want to, so fingers crossed if I'll actually end up doing it.